Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Johnson. What is truth? Now, there's a question for you. It came from Pilate to Jesus during the time that they thought they were trying him, when actually God was really trying the Pharisees and the Romans at trial of Jesus. We'll talk about that sometime. But the question seems so simple and is so evident to history. What is truth? Now, I'm going to take you on a roller coaster ride because I'm going to talk to you about a lot of philosophy, Christian philosophy, that I've considered in my own mind as I've done research on the subject. And I want you to try to listen. This is the beginning of a four-part series, of course, and we're going to work on specifics about what Jesus said here in regards to some of these concepts. And that's what we'll be doing, is dealing with a lot of concepts that I want you to concentrate and think about. Now, also, let me mention to you, I could be wrong in some of this. And you're welcome to write me, tell me where I've made mistakes or your own thoughts that might be more refined than mine, maybe better experienced. So I'm anxious to hear from you, and I hope you enjoy the study anyway. What is truth? Well, the best way to deal with trying to define something is sometimes to define what it isn't. For example, if somebody says to me, "Have you been converted?" I have to ask the question, well, what do you mean by conversion? Have I been converted to what? And why do I need to be converted? And for example, you talk about the conversion to Christ. When you try to explain it, you can't say things like, well, conversion is going to church a certain number of times, because it isn't. In fact, that's how you describe conversion. And when Jesus talked to the Pharisees about being born again to Nicodemus, in order to get to that point, you've got to be able to think on your feet and realize that you just can't explain a certain concept by itself. You don't think like I do. I don't think like you do. None of us think like God does, which is why he said, "Your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways, saith the Lord." He's right. Because all of us are individuals and all of us think differently. If there were 10 people that received the same lecture from me in a room, and then I gave them 15 minutes to write out their summary of my lecture that they had all heard, all 10 of those people would come to me with a different summary, totally different, and it would not be the same, because none of us think the same. None of our experience is the same. All of us have had individual experiences. All of us are individuals. There is nobody like you or me individually. We are by ourselves, and that's why there is nothing that is the same. So you don't think like I do. I don't think like you do, and that's why sometimes we come up with different conclusions. More important than that is understanding that God likes reason. We find truth by reasoning. Our minds want to take these problems and think things out. The theory of a court, American court, is that a jury can listen to the facts from both the defense and the prosecution, and that somehow they can sit in a room and maybe come up with what happened and determine who's guilty and who isn't guilty. That's only one instance in many. You can be assured that nobody thinks like you do. Nobody has the same determination or the same summary that you or I do. We're all different. And in that is some strength, because when we realize that, we're not so hard on each other. We give each other space, we listen to what they have to say, and we draw our own conclusions in the direction that we need to go according to where we are. The same is true with any kind of conversion experience. Conversion is not going to church many times a week. It is not how much money you give to a charity. It is not how good you are. It is not your status or what kind of status you're making. In fact, saying how good you are is to determine who you're comparing yourself to. Are you a good crook or a bad crook? Are you a good executive or a bad executive? Are you a good bank worker or a bad bank worker? So all of it is relative. But truth is not. Truth is pretty firm, and I'll show you why as we talk this over. Truth is not an easy thing to deal with. Let's talk about first, just like I did with conversion, and in coming to Christ, you don't become good, you don't work at a status, you don't worry about how much morality you believe in or how many books you read. Conversion is just not that. Conversion is a relationship. And therein, a relationship with Christ lays the groundwork for a relationship with truth. Now let's talk about what truth is not, first of all. Truth is not something that makes you feel good. Truth is not something that you can manufacture over a period of time. In fact, you most probably will manufacture a lie. Truth is not being good or having a certain standard by which you think you're going to operate. Definition-wise, truth is the way things are. Truth is something that you work with to understand because it's the way things are. You believe that something works in your mind like the chair that you saw in the room. You believe that chair is going to hold you up, but you don't know the chair is going to hold you up until you sit in it. Now, when you're sitting in it, the truth is that chair will hold you up. When you're apart from that chair, standing next to it, then you believe the chair will hold you up. And that's the truth. You don't know that chair holds you up. Well, I sat in it a couple of times before. You still don't know until you sit in it that chair will hold you. You might weaken the legs. Might be bad wood. Might somehow be built wrong, and therefore it may not hold you up. So you don't know it until you experience it. And that's the way truth is. Until you experience truth, you don't know what it is. That was Pilate's question to Jesus. What is truth? And Jesus asked him, are you asking on your own accord, or are you asking for somebody else? Which was the way Jesus often handled the questions anyway, with another question, because he was seeking for and looking for the truth. The best place for us to deal with this study, in my opinion, is to go to John 14 and pay attention to what Jesus said about truth. And let me explain to you why as we go over it. John 14, starting with the first verse. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself. And where I am, there you may be also. And where I am going, you know, and the way you know. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Now, there's some interesting statements that Jesus made in that passage by itself that helps us question and examine and then summarize what we understand to be truth. First of all, Jesus is relying on his own authority to explain to you and I what truth is. And he's very specific. He wants you and me to not be troubled in our hearts. He wants to explain to us that he and God are one. Now, what does that mean? That means that when you see Jesus, you're looking at God. Now, this is where the foundation for truth begins. Well, wait a minute. Can't I have peace without God? Can't I have peace and contentment without Jesus? No. You were built and made to love God and to know Jesus. And Jesus makes it very clear when he begins to address the disciples on this subject. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You believe in God, believe also in me. Now, he had a pretty good Jewish traditional belief to work with because he had people that had been raised Jewish, who had been born Jewish, who pretty well knew their traditions, although there are many of us that don't know our traditions, even though we were born into the families. But Jesus says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Jesus is offering us peace. And he makes very clear that he is speaking for himself and the Father. You believe in God, believe also in me. Now herein is the very crux of your understanding truth, and me understanding truth for that matter. You're troubled, you're frustrated, your feelings are hurt, your life is falling apart, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You've got something that's not working inside. You don't know why you don't feel good. There's something wrong with the way you feel. And you want to straighten that out. Of course, you want to feel okay. You want to be content. You want to feel that joy that is there that you thought you could once experience in life. And you can't figure out why you can't get that joy. It's because you don't recognize the essence of the Bible, the essence of truth, where Jesus says, and I already read it to you, John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Now I'm taking all your agnostic arguments, all your philosophical thinking, I'm taking all your doubts and all your questions and all your sentiments and all these things that are mixing you up, and I'm literally putting them in a ball and tossing them away. What I'm doing is going right to what Jesus is saying, because herein I have something I can grab hold of. I mean, if I sit down and ask you what is truth, I get an answer. I ask you what is truth, I get a different answer. I ask you what is truth, I get a different answer. I get different answers of what truth is because we work with trying to philosophically work ourselves out of our problems and sentiments. Well, truth is educational, meet our needs. Truth is, if we stopped war, nobody would fight. Truth is, if we had more money, we'd be happy. None of that is truth. In fact, none of that is true at all. And that's where you and I aren't thinking the same, because we have to go back to the source of what really is truth. So I'm going to make you jump. And though you may not be there yet, if you pay attention and listen, you may come over to my side of the fence. Jesus said, I am truth. Jesus made a very declarative statement, a very hostile, a very polarizing statement, saying, I am truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. You mean Jesus is all truth? Yes. Every bit of truth that you may know comes from Jesus, originates from Jesus, who is the exact and total, listen to me, the exact and total body of truth. You can't know truth outside of Jesus. Now that includes false news, that includes jokes that have you misunderstanding, it includes things you laugh at, things you can't believe in. You cannot know truth without knowing God. Now the Bible is very clear on that issue. Well, I don't exactly believe in the Bible. Well, then you're ignoring truth. You really want to know what truth is, you have to examine the Bible. Now, I hope I haven't jumped too far too quick. I'd like to come up with philosophical arguments that would kind of sway you into this way of thinking, help you to think about Jesus, make you realize that maybe he's okay. I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste time. I want to make a declarative statement that Jesus is the total truth. And that's why Jesus said, I am the truth. Well, can you know truth outside of Jesus? There is no truth outside of Jesus. There is nothing you can believe outside of Jesus in order to be happy. Pablo Pascal made it very clear when he said, every man has a heart-shaped vacuum that can only be filled by the Savior. Jesus is the originator of truth. Let me carry you further. The spoken word is extremely important. Your spoken word tells me who you are and where you are. I learn things about you. My spoken word tells you who I am, and then I talk to you about whatever it is that bothers me. That's exactly what God does. He speaks, and we are made to listen to him. Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, that's not God's beginning. That's your beginning and mine. In the beginning, the time when we were born and made, when creation came to be, in the beginning in the Bible is your beginning and my beginning. It doesn't have to do with God. God already didn't begin. He was there. He was. God always has been. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, the first and the last. Now, if God is telling the truth, and I keep saying if, that bothers me because I want to talk to you about the definition of truth, but I've got to say to you that there is no truth outside of Christ. Yeah, but I have a lot of fun and I've lived my life without Christ and I'm doing fine. No, you're not doing fine. You got problems inside your heart. You're mixed up. You're messed up. You're worried. You constantly can't be content. Now, God bless you, and I say that sparingly. If in a world of crime or luxury or riches or what have you, fame, whatever it might be that's making you so happy, if you're so happy in that you feel you don't need Christ, you're in real trouble. You are missing God's purpose for your life. If God made you, he must have had reason. Nothing is made without reason. Nothing is made without solving a problem. Nothing is made without solving a problem. If I've got a problem, I want to solve it. If I want to eat food, I got to get a fork. If I want to get somewhere, I got to get in my car. My car doesn't run, I got to figure out another way to do it, and I can't do it just by walking. I've got to find a way to solve the problem. Evidently, God needs your love. So he made you in his image with the ability to love God. God made you for a purpose. And the first purpose is to love him. Now I want to take you back again.